All right. Welcome back to the Board Drill Podcast. As always, I'm Kyle here with Matt. And tonight we kind of have a slightly special, won't call it an episode, it's more of like a quick hit that we're covering. We got an email from one of our listeners, Matt. And in the email is so perfectly titled that we had to come on and make a video about it. The subject of the email is one of your tens of listeners, which means that people actually listen to the terrible jokes I tell. So I'm excited about that. How do you feel about that?
Well, not only are people listening, but someone actually had a thought and responded. So, that's like one of those teaching things. You're starting to get feedback from your students, right? But no, this is awesome that we get to have some interaction with someone who's listening out there, and you know, um, be able to try to answer some of his questions if we're able to. We'll try.
Yeah, I guess we're going to find out if we actually coach football or not. So here it is. I'm going to go ahead and read it out. I'm going to redact some of the information. All right. So it says, "Good morning, coaches. I just want to start by saying thank you, which is amazing. Somebody actually thanked us for being idiots. As a second year football coach, sometimes I feel like I'm drinking through the fire hose. And that's probably not a better analogy than anyone could ever make about being a second year coach. But your content keeps me motivated and striving to be a better coach on a daily basis, which is really good to hear because that's why we do this. We do it for coaches. So to hear that even one person we help motivate, that's fantastic. Um, so he's from the Orlando area, Matt originally. He kind of added that in. I love hearing you talk about Seminole County football back in the day. So let me get into the meat of the email because I'm kind of hopping around here. So he's in year two. He's at the junior varsity level up in Michigan. And he's basically talking about how he's about to be assigned a position group, but mainly the big thing he knows is that he is going to be the special teams coordinator for the JV team. So his question is all around creating goals and setting kind of goals for the season. All right, so I'll read that piece kind of verbatim here. My question is how would I best go about creating goals for the upcoming season? I'm going back and I'm looking at film and tracking a few different stats, but I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. I was going to take a few key points from special teams plays from last year at the freshman level where I coached and the JV levels to create goals. Is that the way to do it? Is there a mandatory list of goals that I should have for a special team unit? He says that he knows that he's asking specifically for special teams, but really any goal setting tips and tricks would be really helpful. So I guess tonight we're going to briefly talk about goal setting. We'll kind of tailor it towards special teams, even though I'm pretty limited there. But I can talk a little bit about the return game there. So Matt, do you want to go ahead and kick us off about goal setting, and let's see if we can tailor it to special teams to answer his question.
Yeah, so for the goal setting, I always used the SMART system for goal setting, and it's an acronym, so SMART.
Something we're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Someone smarter than me came up with this. But the S is for specific, to make sure you have something very specific. So if you're setting a goal, don't make it too general that you can't define whether you met the goal or not. But make sure it's specific enough that you can determine if you've met the goal or not. You don't just want to say, "Hey, we want to have a total of 800 yards on special teams." You want to break it down, make it more specific, make it to each individual group. You want to make sure that it's measurable. That would be the M, measurable. You can actually measure it. And I would say that for anything for football, you'd want to do week by week. For each game, you want to be able to measure and see if you met your goals, and then make sure that the players hear whether you met your goals or not. So whether you make a chart or you announce it, but they have to know whether they're meeting those goals and if they're meeting expectations. The next step is to make it actionable. All right, so that just means that you have a plan in place. So if our goal on field goal block is to block one per week, well, you got to have a plan in place to be able to do that. You can't just have field goal safe and expect to get a block, right? So obviously you have to have an actionable plan and be practicing it and making sure that it's something that you're focused on. You don't want to, if you're not a block team, if you don't do punt block, you don't want to say that we want to block one punt per week and we may only send it after one per week, right? So you're not going to have that rate. So make sure you have an actionable plan and you work week to week. The R is for realistic. All right. So you're not going to return a touchdown every week. You're not going to keep it realistic, and especially being on the JV level,
Yeah.
understand the level of kids you have. Now I will say this, every college coach that I talk to about special teams always feels like high school coaches leave too much on the table. So I think you do have the ability, especially on the JV level, if you're able to focus and practice these special teams, then you'll have the ability to impact games through there. But make sure that your goals are realistic, and that they're time oriented. Obviously, if you make it a weekly goal, that would be your time plan. So specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time oriented, SMART goals. That's the way I learned it in college. That's the way I teach it in class.
No,
Kyle,
I
you have
love it.
anything to add for
Y-
goal
y-
setting?
Yeah. There's so many for special teams that you go through, but I think, like you said, defining who you want to be. Are you a team that's going to go block punts, or are you a team that's going to return punts? And obviously, that has a lot to do with your personnel. Look, some years we had a dynamic punt returner. We're going to try to return punts. If we don't, if we have a kid that can go back there and fair catch it, let's send 10. Let's send 9. Let's try to do some twists. Let's try to block some punts. Your punter, understanding him. Do you want to average a certain distance on punts? Is he a good punter? Are you going to rugby punt it? Is there something you need to do? Is he a mediocre punter? Are you going to fake it half the time? Or are you guys just going to go for it? So understanding all these different things. Field goal makes sense, but kind of extra point. Are you going to run the swinging gate? That's such a big piece. I ran it when I was a head coach. It's one of those where it's something that your opponent has to prepare for, but you can also steal points. And Matt, I know that there's been times you've run the swinging gate. You steal a lot of points over the year with the swinging gate. And then the last one is onside kicks. There are a lot of teams, we've all heard of like the Pulaski Heights and all those guys that go out and they kick an onside kick every time and do all this other stuff. Is that something that you're going to spend time on? Are you going to sky kick and do all these other things? So I think once you figure out who you want to be, then you can set goals, but it's really hard to set goals if you don't know who you are. And I know you kind of covered that in the SMART thing, but again, if we think that we're going to go block a bunch of punts, my goal shouldn't be to return 6 punts that year. Because as well as I know, either you're going to block it or you're going to fair catch it. There's no in between.
That's it. And the other dynamic point to this is we're talking to a guy who's looking at a JV program. He may not know who his personnel is yet. He may not know till week 2 of the fall exactly what players he has. So that puts another dynamic aspect to it, that not knowing your personnel, you don't know exactly what you can do. So it always helps to go in with that plan in place that you can go ahead and implement. So it's better to plan now and be able to implement that plan and have everything ready to go just in case.
And there's things that up front that you need to learn and get good at. Every team in the country, go ahead and listen to this one. I don't care if you're varsity. I don't care if you're college or the NFL. I know you're not listening to this podcast, but there's been a severe drop-off in people that have the ability to judge and catch punts across all levels of football. I came from a unique thing. My dad was a punt returner like his entire life. He was an All-American punt returner in college, just everything I wasn't. He was good. But I returned punts most of my career. And I remember that I was more scared to drop a punt in a game than to get beat deep on a post route. Because me and my dad had worked so much on punts that it was almost unacceptable in the house to drop a punt. You can get beat on a post route, but don't drop a punt. So it's crazy how much people struggle with that. And I think it's from the fact that people don't work on it anymore. They don't go out. I remember I'd go out with a punter and let them just punt 100 balls and catch it every day. And I don't see that in between practices anymore with a lot of kids. They want to go out and throw 7-on-7 and do this other stuff. And so I think the simple things like you're talking about, Matt, right? Catching punts, making sure the holder's good, kicking the field goal, getting the snap right, all these different things. Field goal block, I always go back to this situation because it'll haunt me for my entire life. We're playing Mandarin. They have Carson Beck, who's the quarterback at Georgia. We block a field goal to basically win the game. Our scoop guy does not go behind for the scoop. He just peels off in celebration. The holder picks it up, runs for a touchdown. They win the game. That's how we lost. By the way, because we lost that game, we did not make the playoffs too. And so it was the best defense I've ever coached, and one mental lapse cost us that. So just thinking of all these things you can control, right? It doesn't matter who's on your unit. there's a block guy and a scoop guy right on each side. So those are things you can work on no matter what your talent, no matter what your skill level is, no matter who's on your unit. So I'm with you, Matt. I think that personnel can change time to time, but you also know that there are like 5 or 6 staples that you have to do. You got to snap, you got to catch the punt, you got to kick it, you got to catch, receive it, all that good stuff. So I'm with you on
And
that.
I
Sorry,
think
go
you
ahead.
bring up a good point there. We talk so much about practicing situational football on offense, on defense, especially with offensive guys. You got to do it for special teams too. You
Yes.
get caught in every once in a while, you're going to get caught in a weird scenario like that. I know one year we got caught in a scenario where it was towards the end of a close game. We took a safety and now we got to punt the ball off, and our punter decides, there's a lot of space there. I'm just going to punt it out of bounds. Well, it's still considered a kickoff, so they're moving the ball. So a lot of situations you need to practice with special teams to make sure your players, and not even always practice, but at least make sure your players understand the situation, the rules, and how the games can be impacted by them.
And look, collectively as football coaches, we're the worst at that. At the high school level, I don't think I've ever been on a staff that thoroughly does special teams. And I'm not trying to knock on me, I can knock on me, but I'm not trying to knock on any coach I've ever coached with. There's a time crunch in high school, and you just feel like every once in a while you're just like, oh crap, what are we doing in this game? We have not worked on this enough. And so, a lot of people cover it on Thursday, or you try to cover it right. You have one period on Monday and one period on Tuesday and all, but like, look, they're 5-minute periods or 10-minute periods. And right, we work with like the 11 guys that are out there, maybe a backup or two. And then all of a sudden the game, 3 people are hurt and we're grabbing Johnny off the bench. Like Johnny just run down and kickoff, right? And he's got a job and we don't even know the right. It's not even that we're telling him, we're like, you're the contain guy. Johnny has no idea what the contain guy does on that. So he's just meandering down the field, right? So it's just a great example of it's something where if you can take pride in it and you can be really good at it, you'll probably be very valuable on a staff because not enough guys care or want to care. And I've been guilty of that too. I've been guilty of that as a head coach and a coordinator. I'm like, whatever, it's kickoff. I'm going down here to do whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of assistants feel like that if you give them a special team, that's just kind of a slap in the face. And I don't understand why. I always loved having a special team to be in charge of, whether it be I was either field goal, extra point, or punt team. I loved it. I had fun with it, and I'm glad to see there's a young coach, at least one young coach out there that's excited about his opportunity there, working with the special teams.
Yeah. And so, Matt, I believe you had a chart that you showed me before we started.
Yeah. So I got bored. I got bored at school. I'll be honest.
Matt never gets bored. He's a great teacher. He never spends teaching time doing anything else. For the record,
we are in block scheduling. So 2-hour plan. I mean, you can only do plan so much at one time. Can you see me? Am I on?
I can see it. We're all good.
Fantastic. So I know Kyle's impressed with my graphic skills here.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, it looks like it was done in MS Paint from 1994. But hey, we'll roll with it.
I think I did it in Excel, so pretty much close. But like I said, what's the word?
Rudimentary.
I can't
rudimentary.
Say that.
Rudimentary.
All right, it's really basic, very basic. All right, so very basic special teams goal chart. So I kind of went and said, man, if my job was to make a chart for our special teams, what would I have done? Because we never had one when I was a head coach. We never charted it. We probably should have. We did have helmet stickers that we gave out for big plays on special teams that we could kind of give it our own discretion. But we didn't really chart each individual group, which we probably should have. So I said, okay, between all the special teams, what are the main things that they have in common that would be a goal of mine? And the first thing that always popped to my mind was the missing personnel. And I think every coach in America does it every Friday where you're in the lunchroom, you're somewhere, and all right, I need to see 11 guys stand up for kickoff. I need to see 11 stand up for kickoff return. And you get to the game and someone's going to forget or someone's injured and you don't get that communication back to you and you're missing personnel on the field. So my first thing that went to my head was missing personnel. Kyle, has that ever happened to you at all?
That's happened to every coach in America. I don't care who you are. I don't
It's the
care if you have,
worst.
even if you have that mat that has like 11 spots on it that, people used to have on the sideline. There was that little mat. It was like special teams. At some point, you are going to be turning around looking for someone, and Johnny's going on the field. And Johnny's a great fundraiser, but he's not a great football player.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, those kids are important to your program too, man. You got to have money,
Hey,
right?
There
Second thing,
is some parent out there right now that's going to get a hold of that clip, and they're like, "This is why you suck."
not the only reason. No penalties. So no penalties. Obviously, across special teams, that's something they all have in common. Especially the stupid penalties or being offsides or anything. So
Blocking
I
the
know that
back,
kind of
right? Every
blocking the
kick return,
back,
every kick
blocking
return
the
is blocking the
back,
back.
blocking the back every time. And create a big play.
Yeah,
Somebody create a play. Somebody on a special teams unit between all your units create one big play.
yeah. This spark can be unreal. I know. Obviously, everyone knows the stat. Like if you block a punt, you're like 80% more likely to win the game. I mean, I don't.
92.
Is it okay? Sure.
92%, which I don't know if it's a real statistic. It's something I read a long time ago and I just rolled with.
Everyone's just flowing with it.
I may have made it up. There's an 87% chance I made that stat, but
okay,
I think it was around 92%.
Let's change it. If it's a tight game and it's 30% more likely to win, like it's still important. So I mean, there's something to it.
Absolutely. So kickoff, no returns into our territory, past the 50. So making sure we keep everything in their territory, that's a fairly easy goal. And the way I would approach it, I would make an easy goal and a tougher goal if I could for each unit, so that you're at least trying to hit one of those easy goals every week.
Yeah.
And the point of that no returns into our territory is making sure they don't get a big play.
Yeah.
Where we want somebody to create a big play, we don't want to allow a big play. And then opponent always starts inside the 30.
Yeah,
if they hit that, that's a tougher one. There's only so much you can do for kickoff. You're not going to create turnovers every game. You're not going to. So that's a tough one. But you want to try to pin them deep. I think I changed it to 30. For considering a JV program, where would you be able to get the ball to?
Yeah, right.
That would be big.
High school is really cool because from the aspect of if you have a good kicker, you can get a touchback every time. But if you don't, the guys can run wild on you.
Buckle up. Kickoff return one into the opponent territory. So this is pretty much the reverse. And then never start inside your own red zone, right? So the never start inside their own red zone is a little bit easier. And then you want to return one into the opponent territory, a little bit tougher. Kind of goes hand in hand with creating a big play. We got cut off here on the extra point field goal because I did it in Excel. But 100% PAT field goal, 100% completion, conversion on the PAT field goal, and 0 missed assignments. Every once in a while you get that wing that decides he doesn't want to do his job or he's not really interested in what's going on.
He doesn't want to step down. We're all saying it together as coaches. Yeah. The wing saw 2 guys on the edge, and he didn't want to step down, and someone came right through that gap.
They had a kid over there waving his arms, and he started looking at him and doesn't want to do his job. That's what it is. So 0 missed assignments. I don't know what else you do with field goal extra point.
No, I mean, unless you're I don't know. Unless you're going to fake
unless
a bunch.
You're going for 2, but
if you're going for 2, line up and go for 2.
Yeah. Well, once again, we're back to the realistic and measurable, right?
Yep.
PAT block, proper alignment, 0 conversions on fakes. I'm not even sure how many coaches track their proper alignment on PAT block if you see some of them. And then making sure, obviously they're not faking it. They're not getting the 2-point conversion. That would be that's what you want to stop there. And then if you can create a miss, that's the hard one.
Yeah. Right? And, I honestly, at the high school level, I think you can block a lot of them too. And I always go back to this when I was working in recruiting at Florida State. There was one particular guy we were recruiting. He was phenomenal. This is not why we're recruiting him. He may or may not play for your favorite NFL team, Matt, and he blocked like 13 extra points his senior year. And I was
That's
like,
special.
And I remember, everyone's watching. He's a 5-star DB. You guys can probably figure out who he is. All this great film. And then we're on huddle watching stuff, and all of a sudden there's just a series of clips of him blocking extra points. And I was like, man, I'll tell you what, if there was ever any doubt about the effort of this kid, watching him block a bunch of extra points in games where they're up 40 tells me a
Yeah.
lot about that kid. So I think you can block a lot of extra points if you care. You have to care, but I think if you have a couple special athletes and you take the right angles, you can be, pretty elite at that.
I'll tell you what, special athletes make special teams a lot easier.
Yeah, you think?
Can you write that down as a quote by me?
Yeah.
Um, punt team, zero block punts. Obviously that's an obvious one. You don't want any of those punts getting blocked. 92% chance of losing the game there. And average 30 yards per punt, no touchbacks. I mean, that depends on your punter, what your punter can or can't do. You want to adjust that number. And once again, all these numbers can be adjustable for your players, your team, and what your goals are. PAT return to be able to block.
Punt return.
I say PAT return.
Yeah.
Punt return.
Punt return.
Now, if you return a PAT, that's also good, says not Alabama. Punt return. Create one block, a shank, or a 10-plus yard return. I don't know the stats on punt return yards in high school or especially at the JV level, so that 10-plus yard can be adjusted. But, trying to create a special play there, block a shank, punt, or something like that. And then 0 conversions on fakes. Make sure they're not faking and getting a conversion on a first down.
Yeah, and I'll go back to your top one. Catching a punt and getting 10 yards that's like that hidden yardage thing, right? Because on paper you got 10 yards, but catching the punt, not letting it bounce for another 20 and then taking 10 really could be a 30-yard swing for you. So again, I would even add in, like, don't let any catchable punts hit the ground. I get it. Sometimes they shank it off. It doesn't matter. But I think the ability to judge a punt, charge it, and fair catch it is super important. And probably something that I don't see enough even at the college level. So that's something I would be cognizant about too. So if you're listening, spend some time with your guys, teach them how to catch punts. Even if the kid fair catches it every single time, your net yardage is going to go way up in starting points. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, and once again, these are just ideas.
Except
there might be
go
coaches
catch the punt.
Yeah. But overall, I'm sure there's coaches out there with better stuff. I just threw some of this together and nothing special here. Just putting down, hey, what would I want to see? What would I want to make sure happens with our special teams units?
Yeah, no, so I appreciate you doing it. Basically, you did it in a day to respond to this email, so it's nice to do. But if you're a special teams coach out there and you want to come on and share any of your special teams stuff, let us know. We'll be happy to have you on. In the meantime, Coach who emailed in, we hope that we answered all of your questions. Coaches, if you're out there and you have any more questions that you want us to answer, we're happy to hop on and answer anything to the best of our ability. So if you got anything, reach out to us. It is the Board Drill Podcast at gmail.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at Board Drill Pod, or reach out to us any other medium that you can find either one of us on. So, Matt, any other closing words on this one?
Special players make special teams easier.
There you go. Have a 5-star. That's what I heard. So that'll really make you good. All right. For me and Matt, we're signing off. Hopefully you got something out of this. Have a great night.